So what we're doing is, it's a little different than normally. We're going to start recording these Q&As. Someday we may put them on the site. If you don't want your voice on the recording, don't ask a question. It's pretty easy. And what we're going to do is, Monica is going to pick the people who raise their hands. And we're going to pick two to begin with, because one of you will come to the mic, the other will be ready to go to the mic. And then every time a question finishes, we'll pick another one who will then be ready, so that we don't have to wait for every single person to come up. But you do have to go to the mic, so all of us can hear it, and also we can record it. Do you understand? It's pretty straightforward. So Q&A time. Would you pick two people who raise their hands?
I'd just be curious, what does Cryon have to say about the future with like public transportation or bullet trains, or is there anything exciting like that?
Yeah, artificial intelligence. This is going to help us with the obvious stuff, and that is so we don't run into each other and have a population that is so clogged on freeways and everything else that we just have to stop. You realize what would happen if there was an intelligence behind every vehicle? Is that they would all flow, and there would be a way of coming on the roads. The things we see in the future in movies and things like that, that's what it's going to take. Because with us driving, or whatever it is, and the mass transport I'll get to in a moment, that's going to make it go a lot better, a lot smoother. That's one thing. Then people are all afraid of that artificial intelligence. And of course, mass transit should always be present. I'm in California, in San Diego, Los Angeles, and that whole area. A man named Harvey Firestone convinced the city years and years ago, it was in the 30s actually, and 40s, to take out all the trolley tracks. We had trolleys, even in San Diego, and go to tires and buses. So we never had the easements that were then going to be necessary for mass transit, and today you see the results. So there's going to have to be, we're going to swallow hard and have to then create certain things that we don't have now. That's just common sense. As far as some inventions coming, the biggest one that we're going to have that may very well change this and show what the future is going to be like that we never thought we would get to is when we have what Cryon says, when we discover how to manipulate physics. Right now, we study physics and we make rules. This operates this way, this way, this way. Here are the rules, pass on. Instead of looking at it and saying, wow, how can I change it? Mass, density, all these things, according to Cryon, are manipulatable. And it has to do with polarity and phasing and all these things that physics is starting to understand. That will allow us to have massless objects, and then we'll be able to control things not flying, but floating. You apply that to artificial intelligence, and there'll be layers. Then we won't run into each other. That is coming, but you won't see it, I won't see it, the kids may not see it, the grandkids may. So that's where it's going, according to what Cryon says. So anything is possible, but those inventions are not here yet. Because, again, he says, you're still going to weaponize them right now, till we get to a place where there's more peace on earth.
Thank you. Yesterday you talked about our fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, but they were all from within this solar system.
Yes.
What about transmissions from other galaxies?
Well, those grandfathers, just corrected, those grandfathers' fathers are within this galaxy.
Galaxy, correct.
Right, and I knew you knew that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, right, galaxy.
When you start asking Cryon about things outside the galaxy, including you have, where have our past lives been? If we're eternal souls, is this a onesie, or have we done this before? And Cryon says, this is what you do. When I asked Cryon, how long has my soul been doing this? The answer was yes. In other words, probably a whole lot longer than you can even fathom. Then I asked the question from other galaxies, and he said, don't go there. This galaxy is unique for everything that we've talked about here. Every time we're talking about the benevolence, the creative source, this is something unique to the galaxy. Cryon says, stay away from talking about other galaxies. It's just information that is confusing to you. It's different. Then science has decided, and they point to other galaxies and they say, we've discovered different physics there. There's probably different life there. So it's not the same. So stay within our area. Our grandfathers, our creative grandfathers, and the Orion and the Arcturians and all this is the story of our galaxy. Then when you start looking at it and going, will we ever see them? It's so far away. And then Cryon says, it's only far away in 3D. When you start talking about consciousness, entanglement, things that we're just now starting to see, there is the potential and possibility, not of light speed, that is slow. We're talking about instant communication with consciousness to those on another side of the galaxy. Do you believe that it's possible? Do you know that twins can communicate with each other on the other side of the Earth? They know when things are happening, and that's a DNA combination. We're just beginning to understand these things which have been eye-rolling for so long. And so that's really where it's coming from. Will we know the Arcturians? Yes. Will we know the Pleiadians? Yes. There's going to come a time when we'll have a family gathering. When we reach that point on the planet, when we are evolved enough to understand truly what has gone on here, we'll demand that we come and they know them. And they're not going to come in ships, Cryon said. That's old.
Thank you. Hi, Lee.
Hi.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
First time. Oh dear. Oh dear.
I think you almost even might have just answered my question, but in regards to entanglement theory, does that kind of involve the twin flame spirit? I mean, does that explain that on a micro level?
Yeah, it could. When you start looking at the whole idea, and did you say twin flames? Okay. That's more, I think, of a consciousness entanglement and past life recognition and energies that people find with other people. But in physics, just plain old physics without consciousness at all, entanglement is there. I mean, it's something we're going to understand and use in a way that we don't even recognize we can use. So when you talk about twin flames, and I like to talk about that, and Cryon has discussed that, this is like entanglement would be with consciousness. So to answer your question, that's how I see it. Is it possible that there's an arrangement that is so strong between souls that you will then recognize someone on the planet, even from another country or whatever, so strongly that you say, I know you, we've been together. And that will be a connection that is on purpose, that you're meant to discover, and what you do with it doesn't always have to be romantic. It can be partnerships in business or whatever, but you find a best friend or a partner and you realize we've been together for a long time, and you think alike and you do things alike and you love each other on whatever plane you love each other. That's twin flames. And that's entanglement in a conscious way. So it truly is related, but it's not the physics of entanglement as we discussed it.
Thank you, Lee. Cryon talks about time capsules. My question is, time capsules similar or the same to vortexes?
They're very different. And you got to remember, we're looking at nomenclature. We're looking at descriptions and words that Cryon has given us, and not necessarily what we have learned is the name. For instance, the only time Cryon has talked about time capsules is the nodes and the nulls of the planet created by the Pleiadians. Now, when we create a time capsule for a building or something like that, we take the news of the day, we take everything that's happened that we know, or tapes, and we put it in a vault and make a time capsule of it and say we're going to open it in 100 years. That's a time capsule to us. But a time capsule, as described by Cryon in a node and a null, is a capsule or let's say a place that's a time capsule where things will open at the right time. Now, what he's saying is that these nodes and these nulls, these places where the Pleiadians landed and trained and taught, including Hawaii, are time capsules. And as they are matched, they start opening, and that opening it's time for that. It's past the shift. It never would have happened if we didn't make it past that shift. Is opening and starting to feed the planet and the grids things that we are picking up in the field intuitively. That is why there's a quickening going on of the intuition of how to do things, what to find, the inventions. Are you aware, if you start looking at history, did you know that most of our major inventions were given all over the planet at the same time? Do you find that odd? I find that really odd, just as a logical thinker. Did you know that the Wright brothers only beat the French by 2 weeks? We were all working on powered flight at the same time. Marconi, the invention of the radio, it's still contested because there was somebody who got it at the same time. They just didn't get it public at the same time. And it's odd to me. Usually you look at an invention as one person, like Tesla, with something so amazing. Nobody had it. Now we know that Tesla is a wild card. So if you look at that, it's not impossible that what they're saying is these time capsules may do the same thing. Here comes something else you should know. Here's something else that you should know. So people don't want to think that we are given these things, but there's so much evidence that that's the way it works, that whether you like it or not, we're going to be given these things, and we still are. I'm looking for, and Cryon has channeled it, the way of desalinization of water that we haven't thought of. Cryon is talking about it. We're looking at electricity. Again, Cryon is talking about it. He's saying you missed the boat. You missed the boat. You've got all of this magnetic power that can push and pull. Use it. Instead of building the most expensive steam engine in the world called a nuclear reactor that's dangerous. So you can do these things without danger and without using resources of the planet. It's time. That's going to start showing up. So that's how I feel about that.
Thank you very much, Lee. I just want to say synchronicity is at its max today. Everything you're talking about and everything we're talking about all ties into what I have to say here.
Right on your list there. Isn't it?
And I had to write it down in order to get it to you because otherwise I would forget. But I just want to say thank you to you, Lee Carroll, Joe Dispenser, Greg Lipton, Greg Brayton, and you guys are awesome. And I think you guys deserve a
thank you.
Big applause. Thank you. Thank you. The reason why I come up here today is because I have listened to you guys for practically 2 years now, and my life has changed I'm not the same person. We're powerful creators, and I understand that. And I've listened to you talk about community, new inventions. Right there, we just spoke about it. Inventions of electricity, water, heat. I'm throwing plants and eliminating trash and debris. We are powerful creatures. Together, I'm asking us all support each other in prayer, affirmation, meditation, whatever you want to call it, to help clean up these issues and to help support what you guys teach us. And I'm so awesome and so grateful to be alive at this moment. And that pretty much is it. That includes, let's meditate, because we're powerful people. Let's meditate on eliminating items like the chemtrails, water pollution, and the food pollution. We could do it together. One person. Actually,
and thank you for that. I
love you, brother. I love you with my heart. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that too, because that's what you brought forward here. We have been polluting our planet, polluting the oceans and all that, and we know that. We've heard that all our lives, and now it's reached a tipping point, actually. Such a point where they're saying that we're the ones who are causing the weather change because we did that. Cryon says that's not right, but we didn't cause that. However, Cryon did say you're going to have to clean yourself up soon because you'll kill yourself if you don't. So the problem with pollution is we're going to destroy ourselves if we don't realize this soon. The planet is very survivable. Cryon says it's a lot more resilient than I think. It's going to be here a lot longer than we are, no matter what we do. So I love the fact that right now you're starting to see, along with the Me Too movement and everything, you're starting to see projects that are starting to be privately funded, ideas from individuals, not governments, that are starting to look at even the Pacific junkyard, or whatever things are. And they're looking at ways, and we've been told it's impossible, there's too much. I mean, it would take forever. And people are saying, well, then let's start. Don't tell me you can't do it. funding, it's going to come. There's all manner of things going on, and I'll just tell you one thing that you need to know. There's a special. I keep talking about it. Now I think the special's maybe 2 or 3. I think it may be 4 years old by now. It's on YouTube, and it's called Billions in Change. Billions in Change. The guy who invented the 5-hour energy drink, all right, became, probably not your favorite thing, became a billionaire almost overnight. Luckily for us, he had a consciousness where he said, I don't know what to do with the money. And he's really, really wanting to help the planet. And so he says, I'll fund anything you can show me that works, that's practical or entertaining. Just show it to me. And you got to see this special, about 45 minutes long. Some of the things that people have brought to him that are working are extremely Cryon-esque right now, including one man. Cryon has always said, what are you doing building nuclear reactors for heat when it's at your feet? You don't have to go that far down, and you get heat. And the answer was from the engineers, we haven't figured out yet how to drill that far down, and how to get it from that far down. In other words, all of those objections. And he said, and Cryon's answer, would that research cost you less or more than a nuclear reactor? You know, you haven't figured it out. Spend the money where it's going to count. Then we find out this guy actually figured it out. And he actually figured out how to get the heat from the hole. I mean, these things are known. They're happening as we go. So if you want to see something special, there's the funding. So we say, well, I got this invention. Well, it's free energy and whatever, but I can't get anybody to listen. Write him. If he said, if it's practical and it works, he's interested. And he's got the money. Billions in Change on YouTube, the 45-minute version of that. It's a flasher. When I mean, like, you'll go, what? These things are here and existing. And that's, I think, where it's going to go. So what we're seeing, bottom line, don't look to your government. Okay? They've got their hands full. They really do. It's going to come from private industry, private sourcing, places you don't know yet.
Lee, Cryon has said that we are in a new energy, we're a new human, and that we need to let go of the past and let go of the way we were. So I'm thinking that this means that I don't need to get sick and suffer anymore. Is that true, or is that?
It is true. It is true, and you won't. Getting sick and suffering. You might say, well, it's just the human condition. Then you start asking yourself, you start going around the room where you get different immune systems, whatever, how often do you get a cold? How often do you get the flu or whatever? I haven't had the flu in 35 years. I've never had a flu shot. I have a consciousness that says it's not going to happen. All right? I get a cold about every year or so. Cryon says that is a rejuvenation. We need it because it recalibrates certain parts of the body. You got to go through this. It's not, it's suffering for a little while, but it's a recalibration. And so Cryon teaches that very thing. You don't have to get sick. You don't have to go through these things. It's part of the consciousness. If you've listened to Bruce Lipton, it's part of the consciousness of our culture that expects you to get sick. And there are ads and ads and ads and ads after 10 o'clock at night that tell you it's not your fault, and here is the medicine because you got this and this and this and this and this and this, and it's just endless. And so we're fed this all the time, that it's common to have these things wrong with you. And so that goes into the psyche no matter what I say or anybody else, until we just discard that whole idea and say, look, I'm in charge of my biology. And I'm going to not only live longer, but I'm talking to my cells. I'm not going to catch things anymore because that's just a program that we've been given. Now, there will be people who would argue with that and say, no, disease is disease or whatever. And Cryon says gives you something that nobody has believed yet, and that is, did you know that disease has vibration? What if you're vibrating higher than the disease? It can't touch you. Have you thought of that? And this is part of the Cryon teaching. He says, you're going to evolve to a place where people will study history and remember what cancer was. Because it isn't here anymore. That's coming. I'm a kid. I remember what what polio was as a kid until we got the cure for that. And it was so easy, under the tongue. It's not just inventions that will cure disease. It's about disease that will no longer be there because it can't touch a human who's vibrating at a higher level. These are the things that are coming that nobody's going to believe until they start happening. They'll happen slowly. There'll be reports, well, where has this gone? And what happened to this? And cancer is going to be one of them. I guarantee you.
Thanks. I'm trying to find the right words to ask this question. I'm a happy person.
I'm a happy person.
But, and I'm trying really to ignore news and all of that. But the hatefulness hurts me. And how long do we have to put up with that?
Too long. And here's what I want to tell you as a happy person. That happiness that you are working with is you are part of the battle between dark and light. Your happiness is light. You're not the only one that's looking at the earth, and whether you watch the news or not, and are looking at things and going, how long do we have to have this and this and this and this? Kriyana says this is the battle between dark and light. And so what you have to do, and what Dr. Wolf is part of in all of this, we have to learn to reframe how we feel about these things and understand we're winning a battle. And everything we're looking at, which is dark, is going to lose. But it's here. And it's here. We're at a cusp of human nature change and all that, where and I don't want to get morbid here, but Kriyana says the worst is yet to come. When we discover what is really being done at a level of sexual slavery of children, who is involved, how it's funded, it's going to come out of the woodwork. And that is worldwide. It's coming. And you don't even want to look at that, dear. I don't either. So you're going to have to, because at some level we're going to look at it and go, it wouldn't be here showing itself unless I had the light that caused them to see it. So that's why you got to reframe how you think, and then it won't hurt. It's not going to hurt your heart. Okay? You understand that? Good.
Thank you, Lee. Yesterday I heard something I hadn't heard before, so it may be new to other people or it may just be new to me. But at the near-death experience, we're programmed to have a mystical or a heavenly kind of thing. Who did the programming, and is it real or is it just inside of our brains?
I'll be happy to help you with that, because this was brand new news for me as well, and I'm sitting here channeling, but Kriyana showed it to me. The program is some benevolent program of death given to us by the Creator. Who created us? And who is it who put us the divine seed in us? Who gave us free choice? This is given to us, and Kriyana said, a program. You want to know the proof of it? I didn't realize it. Start checking into NDE experiences. They're almost all identical. You've got the tunnel, you've got the light, you've got the one who comes back and says, I'm not afraid of dying anymore, over and over and over and over. That's a program. And the program, we don't even like to call it a program, is a benevolent program so that we don't go into fear, horror, shakes, panic when we realize we're shutting down and dying. It's a program given to us of benevolence and light, so we'll go, I remember this, this is okay. That should sit well with you. So the program was given by the Creator for us. This is what Kriyana says. There's so much benevolence that you don't see and you don't know about given to us so that we don't have to go into fear and panic and these kinds of things. So that's a good question, because that's brand new information for me too. I love that. When Kriyana gave that, it made so much sense to me. Even sitting here, I thought, now I got it. I said, it's just so interesting to hear the near-death experiences of so many people and to have that similarity. Do you know what else is similar on a whole other subject? And I'll just go there. Nobody ask it. Is that all right? Okay. I love the fact that only time we had humans get out of the magnetic field is when they went to the moon. You realize that? Now, our magnetic field goes out for hundreds of miles. And so the further out you get, the less it is. Kriyana said, book one, you need the magnetic field for life. If you remove yourself from the magnetic field, things start happening. What has happened to almost all of the men who went to the moon and came back? There's been a book written, and there's been a number of them. They first of all, they usually quit the service, they're done. They became artists, a preacher, a poet. Things started happening to these guys. They changed completely simply because they were outside of the magnetic field for a little while. This magnetic field we have is related to our consciousness. Most of us will never leave it. And so that is also a program. I think it helps us with the veil and that kind of a thing. So now we understand, too, that the magnetic field, for whatever it's worth, is starting to lessen. It's not as strong now as it used to be. Cryon said the magnetics of the planet moved more in 10 years than it had in 100. We have now validation of that. I gave it in one of the bulletins we had, and the research shows it. And it's very Cryon-esque. It even shows when it started and stopped. And those years that he said would happen. That's why the whales beached themselves for so long, because the magnetics changed and they were migrating into land instead of water. That's why the runway numbers have been changed all over the planet, because runways are compass headings. Magnetics change, it's lessening, it's changing, helping to change the consciousness because we passed the marker. Do you understand how the Earth is coordinating with us? So you can't unknow those things I just gave you. Go do your research. Those things happened. And they happen on schedule when Cryon said they would happen. Things are happening on the planet that go way beyond that which you consider metaphysics.
Hi. So my question is about the evolution of education and learning.
Okay, education and learning.
So I've noticed personally in myself this rise of feeling like I know a healing modality that I absolutely have no recognition of knowing.
Yes.
And so my question is what does Cryon think about how our education system is going to change? Are we going to have institutions that help us kind of tap into this innateness and kind of expand it? Or is an education system going to kind of be obsolete because the education is actually within ourselves?
I think all of those things, because when I asked Cryon, he says, what you don't know is that over a generation or so, you realize the problem was indigo children coming old school, ADD, ADHD, all this stuff. You realize that over a period of years, and it doesn't take that long for young people to be in charge. So you have indigos, I'm looking at you. You have indigos, even older indigos, then starting to be in charge. By the time they get into the place where indigos are running things and they are the principals and everything else, there's a slow, gradual understanding and recognition of the change of education. So this is going to be a slow thing that happens. Any institution that has to change radically, there's a pushback, simply because it always worked or there are those. But slowly there's a die out. You understand that. And so when you have young people who have grown up in a new energy in charge of it, that's when the things start to be able to be changed. And so they will change probably within. And I love the fact that you said institution. It's going to change paradigms. It may not be the kind of institution you think. It may be more privatized than you think. There may be a realization that Montessori and some of these Waldorfs all along have figured it out, and then a turn to them and ask them for advice in public school. Unbelievable as it may seem, that's where it would be going. And it seems too good to be true, but watch for it in the news, but it takes a while, as you know. But that's, are you involved in that? Or are you just curious? All right. I love your curiosity. You will be involved in it.
As we move away from linearity, are things like ownership and capitalism going to still hang around as we move into these new inventions and patents?
Yeah, the answer is yes, but
like
they morph and change, and you can call them what you want to. Capitalism has a bad name. But it's the way in a real world. I have a degree in economics, so get me going. And it's the way we've discovered where we can have a system where everybody wins. It's not savage capitalism where you have a loser and a winner. For instance, you go to a movie, and it's a great movie, and you sit there and you paid your $10 or whatever, and you enjoy it so much, and then you see the movie actually put about 3,000 people to work, for a year or more, and you realize, wow, this is kind of a win-win situation. Now, there are people in there that got a lot more money than others, and that's whatever it is, you have to look at that. But it's almost like a win-win situation. We're already starting to see it in new ways of business and corporate. For instance, Google itself is an example. When it came in online and all, I thought to myself, how are they ever going to make money? They're giving everything away. Can you imagine we have a world encyclopedia on our phone? Anything you ever wanted to, you don't have to go to the library anymore because your encyclopedia is in your pocket. So this is absolute knowledge for everyone, a world, anything that's ever been worked on or discovered or, and I thought, if they're going to give it away, how is it going to make money? It took them 3 years to figure that out. They didn't know either. But what took place was what you see now with Google and ads and all that. That's just marketing. But it's a brand new paradigm we never saw before where everybody wins. You start to look at the things that in a different way. That every time you have a new paradigm, it would appear that an old one has to go away. It often does, and you bemoan that. And you say, well, I miss the grocery store down the corner or whatever, and now we have to go here, there. And you're part of a new paradigm which eventually will help more of us. I want you to watch for this. So when you take a look at capitalism, that's how it's changing. New paradigms of capitalism where more people win in the process of selling a product. I love something I never thought would happen is that if you're a composer and if you're a kid, and let's say that you're an up-and-coming composer as an 18-year-old, and you got a song that's great. Did you know that you can put it on a place on the net and let 1 million people hear it and judge it right now, even with you and your guitar? You might think, well, so what? I'll tell you so what, because it wasn't that many years ago you would never be heard by anybody, because the record companies had attorneys, not musicians, in charge of opening the bags of cassettes, listening to every single one of them, and choosing which one was good. And that's how hit songs were done. I've been in the industry. Now you have artwork, you have poetry, you have the best of the best, which is instantly available to everybody, and they can make a judge for themselves. This thing about America's Got Talent and Idol and all these, have you seen the amount of talent we're seeing in the world? That never happened before. That is a new paradigm. You get in the picture. So you're not going to have a big shift or something fall or fail and go through that in order for a new paradigm. They show themselves, and the media has allowed that. And of course, with that's the downside too. I mean, you have to choose carefully what you see and watch because everything is available. But we're smart. We can do that. Anyway, that's how I see capitalism shifting and changing. More people are going to win. There's going to be a lot better. We have ways now of microfunding. Have you heard of that? Well, if you have a project, there are those who will loan you $100 or $200 or whatever to get it launched. And these are the things we're starting to see. Never in my age was this here. This is going to change capitalism and redefine it.
Okay. Hi, thank you. My question has to do with artificial intelligence.
Good.
So I totally resonate with what you're saying about what's coming and the future and all the shifts and all the good things and all that. So this question is sort of a tree with a couple of branches. My concern is the loss of jobs that is coming with all the robots and the artificially intelligent systems that are taking the place of jobs. And yes, eventually some people will get trained into new jobs, but there's also a whole section of humanity, the blue-collar workers and coal miners and so on, which doesn't seem like they're going to move into technology that quickly to recover. So this is going to possibly affect our whole economic system and the whole capitalist genre and so on like that. Also, we have the concept of the damage that electronics is doing to our nervous system, children not engaging in their human abilities and taking, all the little electronic things and gadgets and so on. That's all a given. And then we have 5G coming.
That's the third question.
So that's, yeah. So yes, my only solution in my tiny mind is mutation, and that's
Answering
another-
one at a time, and every single one of those is absolutely, truly a concern. Any new technology gives us a concern. I mean, you can imagine what happened when automobiles came in to all of those who did horses. I mean, it always is there, always is there. 5G, I hope they stop it someday. It's not appropriate. Everything I've seen about it is wrong, and yet they're going forward. Do we have power as public or not? And I hope that they can redesign it or eliminate it under the guise of communication is better. They're putting 5G in known to be harmful. Okay. Number two, you ask in the second question about the first question was about jobs. What's the second question? Do you remember what it was? She's not.
Yeah, the second part was children and the EMF
Okay.
and the harmfulness of electricity.
Yeah,
and
okay.
The energies, yeah.
All of these things are going to have to be taken into consideration, but I think the biggest part of your question was the fact that we're giving them gadgets and dumbing them down. Ask a child today to do long division. I'm not even sure it's still taught. And so what there has to be a recognition of back to schooling. So we must have the basics in school. We cannot throw them away because we have calculators. I learned on a slide rule. Anybody know how to work that? Okay. The kids today have no idea. That is very valuable. We ought to be able to do everything manually, and there should be classes on that in school. I think that is coming because it makes sense. There will be some institution will test the kids and find out that none of them could do anything without their phone. And they'll go, holy moly, what's missing, And that's going to get around, and that's how these things happen, very, very slowly. The job situation is more complex. I don't know. But Crime says there's things that you don't know that we'll need to manufacture and do that are not here yet. And so you have a shift from one kind of a production to another production. When Crime said a number of things that are coming, and he talked to this group in Serbia about it. He said, batteries are dead. You won't have them anymore, ever. And then there's a question, well, how are you going to do it? Because you're going to end up with electricity production absolutely everywhere, miniaturized, with little magnets spinning around making trickle charges constantly for your phones or whatever. Batteries won't be then thrown away anymore. And there's a whole industry. What are we going to do about the batteries that are being discarded? And you'll say, there are none. So who expected that? You see what I'm saying? This is the same kind of thing. Nobody's going to expect certain things that are going to occur because they haven't arrived yet that are going to put people to work. And then we have to decide about things like China. Who's going to do our manufacturing? Us or them? Does it make sense? These haven't really been discussed yet or really balanced. And they will be because you're going to have younger and hopefully better common sense politicians who will ask those questions. And then the public can start voting and seeing a different kind of politician. Crine has talked about this. He says you're going to have a politics where they don't assassinate each other. And they don't have committees digging in the dirt of the other side's, right. And that you're going to judge on how compassionate they are to each other. Can you imagine such a thing? I can't either. I go, well, that's nice talk, Cryon, but that's not in my time. And Cryon said, you're right. It isn't in your time, but you'll see it start. And what you're going to see it start, and they'll lose, but you'll see it start. Because somebody's going to get the idea, I'm going to win this election because people are going to see in me wisdom and balance. They're not going to see me assassinate the one who's running. I would like to talk to the one who's running and say, you're a patriot just like I am. We got different ideas, but let's go for it. You run on your ideas, I run on my ideas, but there's nothing wrong with you, sir, ma'am. And you go from there. And people are going to see that and go, that's the person I want. I don't care what they say. I want more of that, especially on what's happening today. So maybe what's happening today is going to show us so clearly what we don't want. that we will then swing the other direction, and then there'll be a day where we say, Cryon's right, look at these campaigns, or, they're kissing each other. So you don't know what you don't know, and jobs is one of them. Economy works that way. There's always a problem when you have new inventions that take away jobs and things, and we'll get through it. I hope that helps. We have one last question. I'm sorry about the people. I'll tell you what. No more people in line. We'll deal just with the people who are. But we have to go quicker, and that's my job. I'm sorry, your time is up, sir. That's my humor.
It's a short one.
Okay.
So I'm very impressed with the method that seems to be sweeping the world, the Ho'oponopono method, therapy method. And I was just wondering if it goes back to the time of Lemuria.
Absolutely. In fact, it is a Hawaiian name. I learned about it more than 10 years ago from Jan Tober. She was always talking about Ho'oponopono. And then we would have this thing where we touch foreheads and you're supposed to look in each other's eyes. I could never do that. I just burst out laughing. This is just whatever. This is a forgiveness process. And the forgiveness of others and yourself is key to starting a compassionate purpose.
Hi. I was just curious if you have an update on the water cycle. I live just south of Charlotte, and I think we came in at like 18 or 20 inches above average or normal.
It's going to continue that. There'll be cycles of more and less. But what you're seeing is a change of weather. So the weather means water. San Diego, where I live, is known for very constant temperature. It's a desert area. There is very, very little rain. So we buy our water from Northern California. They're now in trouble. And so there's a raging argument about why should we sell our water now to the south and all that in California. You're starting to see that. So I would like to tell you, in the last month and a half or so, when I return home, it's raining. It's been raining almost every other week now in San Diego. That's unheard of. I was raised in a town, I saw snowfall for the first time when I was 30. I was raised in a town where it wasn't a day where I couldn't ride my bike. That's what I'm used to. It's changing there, too. It's changing everywhere. More rain, less rain, expect it. And that's going to happen. You're going to continue to have more rain in these areas. So what do? You just prepare for it. And it means if you have to do more drainage and the city has to come up with it, you do that. You survive. But in this area, this little mini ice age we're going to have is going to change the weather, but you're not going to be frozen out like they are in North Dakota, and they have to look at electricity production and all the other things. So in Australia, it's interesting. It's just the opposite. They had the hottest summer they've ever had before. We're talking 120, 40 degrees Celsius. And that's in town, that's in Sydney. Bushfires are going like crazy. That's all part of the weather shift, too. They're seeing the opposite of the mini ice age down there, but they're certainly seeing the weather shift.
Hey, I totally understand how the light is giving us all a better view of what's in the dark. My question is, how can we best support, because all that's going to be a huge shock to everybody's system. And even us that are aware of it are still going to go, ugh. So how can we best support ourselves, our loved ones, and our community, our country, our planet as a whole to hold space for that?
That's going to be up, they're going to watch your reaction because you tell them you've got something. You're in a meeting like this and you're studying it with us, with me. They're going to look to you for your reaction. And if you go wacko and into fear, they'll know that everything we teach is nonsense. You see?
They're going to look to the people the community is going to look to the people that are not losing their minds.
Yeah, but they're watching us. They're watching us. We got people in almost every industry in here. And we got teachers and nurses and healers and whatever, and maybe even a physicist. This is what I see in our audiences. It's how we react. It's also how we react to our kids and our grandchildren and whatever, and what we show them. And if we're not afraid and we have good explanations and we talk about light and all, it gives a whole different perspective. But they see balance. We got to show them balance. This is Cryon 101. That's the answer. No matter what happens on the planet, we got to show them balance. People say I'm the Pollyanna channel. But you got to remember, Cryon is a futurist. Cryon sees and tells us the future. Not today, not tomorrow, not even 10 years from now. I mean, the Ice Age is 15 years. He says you'll know it when it gets here. These other things I'm talking about with new economies and new communications and better sense of what we're doing comes slowly, but it's coming. Like the Me Too movement. Ladies, did you ever think, honestly, that you'd see it? And the answer is no. Your heads are shaken because it never did. Why is it happening now? Why are you calling the things that are happening and people are coming out of the woodwork and going, uh-huh, and the church with the pedophiles? How long has that been happening? Forever. Now it's starting to show. That's got to tell you that we are tweaking the average curve of what we're objecting to, what we want, and what we're doing about it. And that really is the answer. It's going to come slowly, and we have evidence that it's already started. Okay? Super. It's time for a break, but nobody can ask me a question in the break. I know what you're thinking.